Hey, my name's Stephen Baskin. I'm a final semester law student at the University of Queensland, and I wanted to talk to you about Oz Pearlman. The YouTube algorithm has been pushing Oz crazy recently. If you didn't know, he's a mentalist magician who's pulling off some pretty crazy tricks. He correctly guessed Joe Rogan's PIN code to his ATM card.
It's not 2020. How'd I do, Joe? Is that your ATM PIN code?
Yeah. That's weird.
He figured out the word that Valerie Harper whispered to Howard Stern on her deathbed that he never shared with anyone.
Valerie Harper told you a word that only you and her know, and nobody knew before. And remember this moment, Howard, because you're going to be talking about this for years to come. The word she told you was curly, wasn't it?
Oh, fuck, that's the word. She looked at my hair and said, the word is curly. Wow. What's going on with you? You were a devil worshiper.
And there are, numerous other podcasts where people choose either a word or a name or a number or some sort of phrase from their childhood that's so close and personal to them that they're all convinced that it'd be impossible for Oz to know unless he could actually read their minds or time travel or something.
That's the craziest shit I ever seen in my life. That's the craziest shit I ever seen in my life. Holy fuck. That's crazy.
But Oz doesn't claim to be a mind reader or have any kind of paranormal ability. Instead, he claims to utilize over 30 years of body language study in order to discover whatever it is his target is thinking about. He says this creates the illusion that he's reading your mind, but in reality, he says he's just reading your micro expressions, like how your eyes move or how your lips move or how your fingers move, how you react to certain cues and suggestions that he pokes you with. He'll ask you to give a fake word or a fake answer to the question and then claims he can reverse engineer it to get to the real secret answer. So while he's very open about the fact that he doesn't have psychic or supernatural powers, he gets pretty close by insisting that he does have a mastery of all of these other kind of skills and that those are what he's relying on to do what he does. And then he claims that he'll be able to teach you how to do similar things in his up-and-coming book, and it'll, improve your life. I'm here to tell you that Oz's real ability is his ability to con you, and that buying his book isn't going to reveal how he actually does what he does, unless it reveals what we're going to figure out using critical analysis in this video to get to the truth, just like a lawyer would in a court of law.
What do you mean by that?
I just think that people that are really intelligent and hyper logical, like I just did a partner retreat for a law firm. These are people that their whole living is reading documents and finding the gotcha, right? Like this is how I'm going to defend this case. And so these people work in a world of logic where when you do what I just did to you, their mind melts. They're like, what do you mean? Like their whole job is getting to the bottom of things.
But before we do that, I want to say the reason why I'm making this video. And it's because Oz, I don't like what he does because he's never genuine. It's one thing to be a magician and to entertain people with well-crafted illusions and cultivate a sense of mystery, and everyone wants to know how you did it, but you don't reveal the secret because that spoils the game. That's all totally fine. But with those tricks, there's always the background context that what they're doing is a trick, that when they say that they're magically making a card disappear out of a deck and appear in your pocket, none of us know exactly how they've done the trick, but we all know it's a trick. But Oz doesn't do that. That background reality, that background safe zone, it's gone. He actually represents himself as having the genuine ability to do what he claims he's doing. And that's where it crosses a line for me. At this point, what he's doing is no longer magic, it's misinformation. And I don't think misinformation makes society better. And when it's misinformation that is designed to help sell a book, that's getting pretty close to fraud, in my opinion. So watch this very quick clip from Flagrant with me, where one of the hosts, Akash, is talking to Oz and comparing him to an ordinary mentalist magician. And I want you to see what I mean when I say that Oz is crossing a line.
So far. You know what I do like about what you do? I think what magicians did when we were growing up, and what the mentalists, we had a mentalist at a restaurant that we were all eating at, the three of us. Yeah. And we figured out his shit within like 3 minutes. But hopefully it was a lot of like,
3 hours for me.
They sell this illusion of magic. Oh, this is a mystical thing. We're all connected. Yeah. Whatever thing they use is like you don't do that, which I like.
You break
like,
kayfabe.
Yeah.
They don't break the
yes.
kayfabe. Like
Yes,
it's
and-
like wrestling is real. That's what they're doing with a lot of magicians, which is also cool because you want to submit yourself to this. But I think because you don't have the props,
It almost makes it
Yeah.
more impressive.
Yeah.
And it's less like I don't have to submit myself to this idea that magic exists. I just submit myself to the idea that there's someone who's really fucking good at reading people and situations and whatever, and that's an insanely unique, cool skill to have.
Right,
That's
and
all
a
I have to say.
transferable skill.
Yeah.
Some people always ask me, they're like, were you born this way? And I go, absolutely not. I've learned.
So Oz has to rescue what Akash did. So you see what Akash says. He says that he likes that he doesn't have to, he's not being pressured into believing that magic is real. Instead, he just simply has to submit to the idea that Oz is just insanely talented and, you know, he has this unique ability and that's really, really cool. That's the only idea that he has to submit to. Oz has to rescue that because Oz doesn't want to send that message because it doesn't sell the book, right? He has to say instead that he just went through this process of learning and that anyone else can learn to do the same things that he does. So without any further ado, let's jump into the Joe Rogan experience and we're going to see how Oz sets up the ATM pin code trick. And we're going to actually start a fair bit before he actually goes into the trick because we're going to analyze what Oz's genuine skill actually is, because he does have a genuine skill and it's the gift of the gab, and he knows what words to use to manipulate people into thinking that he can do what he does. If mentalism has any kind of skill to it, that is the skill. It's the skill of the gift of the gab and how to talk on the fly in a persuasive way. Oz definitely has that, so let's break it down.
So magic tricks are different because magic is there's a sleight of hand, right? So you're deceiving your eye by making you look at the wrong place at the right time when I do a move. And I can practice that move over and over and over until I get it perfect so that when I perform for you, it works, right?
Okay.
Stand-up comedy, the most pure art form, right? You and a mic, that's it. Mine is the closest. Magic, you have props. Mentalism, there's no props. Like, I don't need you to pick a card anymore. I don't need it.
Right.
I can just tell you, think of a card. And that's
Okay.
where I go with it. So now you start knowing how people think, and you, in essence, reverse engineer the human mind. It's kind of
Okay.
like magic of the mind. And so that's where it kind of went from magic, and I kept doing more of the mentalism, more of it. But mentalism has a very steep learning curve. If you go do an open mic and you suck, how many people get to the level of getting better, putting in the work? It takes 10 years to be funny for most people, right? There's a
Yeah.
couple phenoms, but that's a different story. So most mentalists, they drop off because I'm just going to go back to magic tricks. This works every time.
So what's so brilliant about this, right, is he's painting this image of that's actually completely untrue. He's making mentalism look like it's the peak art of magician, you know, or so it's the peak subset of different sort of magic specialties that you can go into. That's not the case. Mentalism is considered by magicians to be the bottom of the barrel. And the reason for that is because mentalism absolutely does involve a gimmick of some kind. Most of the time, it absolutely involves a gimmick that allows you to get the information that you later pretend to use mentalism tactics to figure out. So mentalism is not, absolutely not what Oz is suggesting, which is this thing that you have to put in years and years and years of practice in order to arrive at a particular level of skill. That's not what mentalism is at all, but it's extremely persuasive of Oz to frame it that way because it sets a context for everything that he's about to do later that makes it look like he has an incredible level of ability. So it's very persuasive what he's doing, but completely bullshit.
So it's more difficult to learn.
Way more difficult.
Is it sheltered? Like, is the material on it difficult to find? Is like
It's. I think it's more that people don't have the thick skin. Like the same way you said the quitting mentality, where I came back the year later. Most people won't improve because you can't practice mentalism in front of a mirror. You can practice magic. So when I do the trick on you, and it's a card trick, no offense to magic, it's great, but what we're talking about is a much higher level.
It's absolutely not a much higher level. And I just want to say, I mean, I know this will never happen, but if any one of these podcasts that have had Oz on wants to invite me to come on, I have no mentalism experience at all, but I know how he does his tricks and I could do it better. I could read all this. I could do all this body language analysis. You know what? I'll do voice analysis. You can blindfold me and I'll just listen to your voice and figure out all of the little idiosyncrasies and ups and downs and tensions in your voice in order to be able to figure out out whatever secret word or number or childhood phrase that you're thinking of. Bring me on your podcast and I'll show exactly how to do that without any preparation whatsoever, right? I'll make that claim.
I can't get it right. And the first few times.
And I should be clear, you'll also know by the end of this video exactly how you could do the same thing.
Times you do it, the first 100 times, you eat shit, like you're going to get it wrong. And most people don't want to do that. Oh. Watch. Let's try something.
So that is a complete lie, by the way. When you understand how mentalists do what they do, you don't eat shit the first 100 times. That is not true at all. It is such a simple and straightforward method that once you know how to do it, the real skill is how can you use language to distract people from how simple it is that you're doing what you're doing. It's all about the performance. Do you have that level of ability to perform? Do you have the gift of the gab to distract people from what the trick really was?
Then fun.
Okay.
How about this? If I were to ask you, how long you been married?
16 years.
Okay, nailed that question. Well played.
Thank you.
You got your sister's happy, your wife's happy. If I asked you, would your wife...
One thing that annoys me about Oz is that he has to rely on these cliched jokes all the time because he's constantly in a state of performance, because he's not ever relaxing and just being himself and just talking about what's actually going on in his head, because he's always in this perform mode and he's essentially always lying to you. The only way he can kind of build rapport is by relying on these sort of cliched jokes. It's a funny thing that you don't really know until you've tried to just constantly perform. But it's so much easier to bond with people when you just relax and you're genuine. He can't do that because if he's relaxed and genuine, he's going to tell you that everything he's telling you is bullshit.
Wife know your social security number?
No.
She doesn't know it?
No.
So is there any way in the world I could know your social security number?
I don't think so.
Right, you say I'm a stalker, who knows?
Yeah, you could have got the information.
Maybe.
Online.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical, you're skeptical.
Well, especially someone famous.
Yeah, fully. Plus you can't change that, so I'm not going to do that to you.
Dated.
Okay, so this is a persuasive technique where he's building rapport with Joe by setting up the fact that he's got, first of all, this super high level skill that took years to build. And now he's going to prove it to Joe, and he has to show that he's on Joe's team by showing that he shares Joe's skepticism. So how do we get to some sort of information? How can we find something that he can use his mentalism skills to read off Joe that isn't going to be explained by him just doing some sort of hardcore research beforehand, like a stalker would know your social security number?
It dumps. Yeah.
You know, if I told you right now to make up a random number, I'd say, get out your calculator. I'd love that. And you add it up and you do a random number. Screw calculator. I want it to be spontaneous. Would your wife know your ATM PIN code? No?
No.
Does anyone buy that? I'm just curious. If when you watch that, do you think that what happened is that Oz thought of a method where Joe could maybe put some random numbers into a calculator and that he could guess that, and then he just suddenly gets a better idea, and that's a genuine, like this face that he does
Make
right
up
here?
a random number. I'd say, get out your calculator. I'd love that. And you add it up and you do a random number. Screw calculator.
Does anyone think that's genuine? Because that to me is just very obviously not genuine. But we don't need to rely on body language analysis to figure out that he's not being genuine. We can just use critical analysis. And so we understand that we've got a guy here that's claiming that he can use body language analysis in order to get some sort of hidden piece of information, any kind of information that's in your head. The fairest way to really prove that would actually be to use the method that he's initially suggesting here, which is to get a calculator or just to get something, think of a bunch of random numbers and have Oz figure out what those numbers are. He says that because that is the purest test that he could possibly do. He says that to manipulate you into thinking that that is actually something that he could do. Because why would he suggest it if he couldn't follow through, right? The answer to that is he suggests it because he knows that he's going to steer it towards the PIN code anyway. But if we think critically again, isn't the PIN code kind of similar to the social security number? Like if the social security number wasn't a good idea because someone could be a stalker and access it in some way, doesn't the PIN code have the same kind of problem? Couldn't you stalk someone and figure out their PIN code? Of course you could. Of course you could. So he mentions the calculator, he mentions the random 4 digits, and then scraps that idea in order to move on to the next one. He uses some really powerful persuasive techniques. In particular, he says, I love that, when he's thinking of the idea. So he's thinking of the calculator idea and then commenting on the idea as if it's something that's just coming to him spontaneously in his mind. It's not. This is a script. He's following a script. All that stuff that he said before about not being able to practice mentalism in the mirror, 100% you can practice mentalism in the mirror. You just practice lines like this, which he would have done 100 times, like absolutely 100%, sorry. He would have practiced this particular script before dropping it on Joe.
Okay, I want it to be spontaneous. Would your wife know your ATM PIN code? No?
No.
Lie to me. Do not tell me your real ATM PIN code.
Okay.
Obviously, unless you want to. Make up a fake 4-digit number off the top of your head, what feels to you utterly spontaneous.
Okay.
When I say go, 1, 2, 3, 4-digit code, random, go.
Okay.
Say it.
2020.
2020, okay. So you ask me, how do I do what I do? Now,
Right.
I'm going to write down 2020.
Okay.
It's weird, but statistically, men will lie bigger, women smaller. Men like to lie by saying things are bigger, right? No shocker.
Okay.
So I don't
So again, we have the cliche joke, right? He's making a men lie about penis size joke.
think, I would tell you right off the jump for me, that means that your first number, you don't have to say anything yet, I wrote 2020, is smaller. That's what most people do when they're rushed. If I had given you 5 minutes, you would have done this different.
No, I wouldn't have.
No, you would have.
Why would I have?
Because you would have thought about it, and then
No.
people go down a different path.
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Okay, worked out
Nope.
for me either way.
So there's a lot in here that's really interesting to break apart. First, Joe is a terrible target for a magician. He's too skeptical, so he doesn't want to do anything to kind of feed into your nonsense. And that's why a lot of people like to watch Joe, because he's genuine and he just says what he thinks and he is who he is. And there's a reason, which we'll get into later, why Oz is having to use this kind of trick as opposed to sort of some of the other tricks that he does on other shows. And it's because I think that Joe wouldn't have cooperated with the gimmick that Oz requires people to cooperate with. We'll unpack it more later. Because Joe is authentic. He just wants to represent what is happening. Here we go. And I think it's somewhere stated in this podcast that how Joe does his podcast is people come in, they sit down, they do the show straight away. There's no pre-show stuff. Joe stuffs up the trick by saying 2020. You know, Oz asks him to give him, you know, just a random set of 4 numbers. Joe gives him 2020, which he later reveals was the year that he moved to Texas. That doesn't really comply with what Oz asked him to do, which was to kind of come up with, 3176. And that Oz's whole gimmick is that he's going to reverse engineer those numbers that you think you chose randomly, but actually there was some sort of secret hidden meaning in those numbers, and he's able to find your PIN code as a result of reverse engineering that. Joe just gives him 2020, which actually, if you think about it, just using critical reasoning here, like, Oz is lost now. How can you reverse engineer 2020? Because 2020 is one chunk. It's not individual data points, right? It's just 2020. There's no way that you're going to be able to get from 2020 to some PIN code, especially when the reason that 2020 was given is because it was the year that he moved to Texas. So he didn't comply with what Oz did. So he's actually screwed up Oz's trick, but now you're going to see Oz's skill, which is that he can roll with it anyway.
You'll be honest if I'm...
Oh, and I should say, you'll see what happens here is he says that if he gave Joe more time, that Joe would have gone down a different path. And Joe says flat out, no, I wouldn't have. Why does Joe say that? Why is Joe so confident? Why does Oz miss on this particular point? The reason Oz says it is because generally that's always going to be true, right? If I give you some time to think of a random set of numbers, and then I give you 5 minutes to think of a random set of numbers, you're going to think of a different set of numbers. Unless you're like Joe and you have a particular justification for choosing the numbers that you did, which is that he moved to Texas at this particular year. That's his reason. That's going to be the same straight away. It's going to be the same 5 minutes from now. It's going to be the same 10 minutes from now. So Oz is using what would normally hit like 99% of the time, and it's missing on Joe here. But then here's the catch. Look at what happens. He says,
People go down a different path.
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Okay, worked out
Nope.
for me either way.
worked out for me either way? How could you say that it worked out for you either way? Like, you've absolutely already made a mistake right from the get-go, and you're already going to claim that the end result, the destination of knowing the PIN code, that's already there? that's absolutely nonsense, right? If the whole thing about mentalism is that, you know, you have to push through these mistakes and it's so difficult because it has such a high learning curve. If your justification for how you got there is incorrect, shouldn't you be really concerned at this point? But instead he says, worked out for me either way. So he's confident that he already has the correct answer. Why would he be confident? Because he already has the correct answer, because he's hired someone, private investigator or whatever it was, in order to see Joe use his ATM pin code and extract that information and come into the show with that information in hand. That's the only thing that potentially makes sense here. Why else would he be so confident that he's going to get it right? Like, he should be like, oh damn, whoa, you know what, maybe I went off on a completely different path here. All right, let's see what happens.
You'll be honest if I'm right.
Okay.
I got a hit, which means it's a 0 or 1. I think the first number of your code's a 1, isn't it? Your real PIN code.
My ATM
PIN code.
Why would I tell you that on the air?
Should I only show this to you?
Sure.
Only show it to you?
Yeah.
Can we acquiesce that the first number I got was correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Super genuine reaction from Joe, right? You can tell that he is not happy about what's happening. Oz has already guessed the first digit of a PIN code, which is already impressive because you're not going to randomly guess the first digit of someone's PIN code, right? You've got a 10%, maybe I think less because you include 0. No. You've got a 10% chance of getting it correct, right? And he just gets it right straight away, and Joe knows that there's no way that he can be reverse engineering 2020 in order to get there. So what's happening? Well, he's just revealed to Joe that he's done something invasive behind the scenes in order to get his very real PIN code, and that, to someone like Joe who doesn't even share his PIN code with his wife, is going to be upsetting to him, and that's what you're seeing right now.
Now, you did repetition. So yeah, I like the fact when people always say to me it's fake when they watch the videos, they're like, you must have set up. Joe doesn't even want this to happen right now. He had no.
And Oz, to his credit, is picking up on the negative emotion that Joe is putting out right now. 100%. He's trying to diffuse the situation by kind of making it humorous, but 100% he can feel that Joe is upset. And look at Joe's body language. Now we're doing body language analysis. Joe is not up. He's not happy. He's frowning. He's got his arms crossed. He's not impressed.
No idea this was going to happen. You used 2 numbers in repeats. What that means is you probably did the same thing. You also didn't use any of the same numbers. I know there's not a 2, a 0, or a 2 in it. I don't think so either. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching you while I say it. You put the hand up. You might as well have said yes to me out loud. So now I know.
So just to drive the point home, what kind of analysis is he using here? He's suggesting that because Joe used repetition 2020, that there's got to be some sort of repetition in the PIN code. We don't see what the PIN code is because Joe doesn't want it displayed to everyone, understandably. But what we're seeing in action is Oz just using the gift of the gab. He's trying to find some sort of pattern, and people are good at this. Like, you know, and if you think about it, you're probably good at this as well. Is there any way that you could turn 2020 into your PIN code, like your actual PIN code, and sort of find a way to justify it? Oz has that skill. No matter what number Joe threw at him, he'd be able to reverse engineer it to get to that PIN code. And by reverse engineer, I just mean create bullshit reasons to make it seem like he's reverse engineering it to get to that PIN code.
Think of the second number,
Okay.
third number, fourth number.
Got it.
Every time you did it, it's a data point.
Okay.
I'm only going to ask you one more question. I'm not looking for answers. The last number is the biggest, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm showing this to you. Is there a camera behind me? I don't want to make sure. I'm only going to show it.
So just the final little bit of persuasion here. That that he did, the last number, it's the biggest, isn't it? And then boom, going into the confidence. That's to create the illusion that maybe he's not completely confident in the answer. He just needs a little bit more to get that confidence. And then when Joe says, yeah, the last number is the biggest, boom. All right, he's like, yep, I've got it. This is the way to go. That's kind of mimicking how we figure out things in real life. We have a hunch and then we see some little extra detail that kind of pushes us over the edge, but it's completely manufactured. This is something that Oz would have practiced in the mirror. That sort of reaction, right, is a rehearsed one to create the impression that he's figuring something out when in reality he knows from the get-go what the answer is.
To you. It's not 2020. How'd I do, Joe? Is that your ATM PIN code?
Yeah. That's weird. I'm skeptical because I've got that PIN code in the mail. You know?
He's calling his bank right now and being like, yo, do you know this? Has this guy been playing the long game?
Yeah, I don't like that.
So again, genuine reaction from Joe. He's not happy about what has happened, and immediately the skepticism is coming out because he knows that 2020 wasn't the way that Oz was able to get there, and so his brain is looking for other explanations, such as maybe he's somehow found him in the mail. A bunch of people online think that this was maybe, you know, some higher up sending a message to Joe by, you know, sending some sort of operative and giving Joe some kind of warning. I think it's much more reasonable to just assume that he would have hired a private investigator to follow Joe around and figure out his PIN code that way. But Joe is upset, and how Oz deals with this is kind of interesting, right? Because is this when Joe offers the explanation that, you know, he got that PIN code in the mail, that was supposed to be the thing that Oz was wanting to avoid, wasn't it? That was the whole point of the conversation about the social security number, is that we wanted a way to prove the skill that wouldn't result in any kind of doubt in the end. But Oz has failed in that. He diverted away from the random number calculator thing, which would have legitimately proven his skill. He went for the PIN code, and now we've kind of got this sort of unresolved tension, right? I will play for you the next part where Joe does explain that the reason he chose the number was because of the year he moved to Texas.
Interesting.
I'm trying to avoid criminal. Yeah, so I want everyone to know that was correct, right? That is, you went 2020.
Yeah, that was correct.
Your wife of 16 years doesn't know it. Now I do.
It's 2020, not. It's just because that's the year I moved here. It wasn't like.
I know you think that's the case.
No, that's 100% the case. That's exactly what it is. What do you mean? You know, I think that's the case. You said a 4-digit number, and I was like, oh, the date I moved here.
Right.
2020, perfect.
I hear you.
You don't believe me.
It's not that I don't believe you. It's that we got layers. So like
So now Oz he's even actually going beyond his original claim. It's not even about reading body language and reverse engineering that to follow your mental thought patterns. It's now he's got access to your subconscious. Now he even knows the thoughts that you're not thinking. It's at this point, it should strike you that it's ridiculous what he's saying, that he's clearly lying. He's clearly not representing the truth. The way this trick works is he's gotten the information beforehand. So I'm going to switch to another podcast. We're going to look at the Joe Budden podcast, where with one of the hosts, he does another trick, except this time he's had time, unlike the Joe Rogan experience where he had to come in and he sits with Joe and the show starts. With these guys, he was able to interact with them before the show started. And that makes a big difference in terms of the kinds of tricks that he can do. So let's watch.
What I like to ask people is ask me a question that nobody would know. Even your boy from 17 years, he's not going to know this.
True.
Okay? So when I walked in this room, full transparency, I walked up to Parks, I said, come up with the question. Don't
Pro tip, when a magician tells you that they're giving you full transparency, they're not giving you full transparency.
say it to anybody. Don't write this question down. Don't nothing. Think of a question that none of us would know.
Yeah.
There is no way in the world I could know what that question is. Could I?
No, not a chance.
Well,
no one in this room would know what the question is.
Forget the answer.
Yeah,
Forget
that's
the
hard answer. That's big piggity.
I'm talking about even what question you're gonna. It's not mother's maiden name, is it?
No.
Okay, so
Of course not.
if you ask the question out loud, you put it out in the universe. Could any of us know the answer?
No.
Okay, what's the question?
When we were
Again, just using critical analysis, why does Oz need to ask him what the question is? Why can't he just figure out what the question is? If he's got this ability to just really, use body language in order to find out all kinds of information, why not just reveal what that question is? Why does he have to ask him? The truth is, Oz actually doesn't know what the question is. He only knows what the answer is. And it's because, as we will see, Oz has already extracted the answer to the question beforehand, but he doesn't know what the question is, so the answer kind of is out of context and sort of meaningless. So he needs him to say what the question was in order to now create some talk, some language in the conversation to get a conversation going so that his banter is going to make sense.
were teenagers, a couple of my friends, when we would get real fucked up, would say a phrase to each other.
Okay, no more. Don't say anything more. Imagine you're in front of a keyboard.
So remember that, by the way, when they were teenagers, they used to drink heaps, they get real fucked up, and then they would say a particular phrase. Remember that.
But with computer, different than thumbs is texting. Put your hands like on a keyboard right now in front of you. You got uncross your legs.
Right. See, I feel like now you're cheating.
I want you to imagine that you type the answer. You don't have to actually move your fingers. You just got to think about it.
Okay.
All right, look what he did. I saw it. See, why did I position him like that? I like how Flip is still shook up from before. You see, and this is like, how the hell?
Shook up now.
How'd you know he's the king of spades? All right. You tapped your thumb once.
Uh-huh.
What's on a keyboard? Everyone take a moment.
Space bar.
Space bar. Space bar-ish. Boom. You did that?
So this is another technique that Oz will use, and you can use it too if you want to do a trick like this. You just need to say that you spotted some kind of very small detail, and then use that detail, link that detail to information that you already know. So in this case, Oz knows that the phrase is 2 words, and if you're going to write 2 words on a keyboard, you're going to need a space to separate them. And so Oz is claiming that he saw him, up his thumb, and that's now unraveled into Oz's confidence that there are 2 words here. But again, if we're thinking about this logically, why would he tap with his thumb and not type with the other fingers beforehand, right? And then do you really think that this guy is going to ghost type on a keyboard when he's being scrutinized by a magician, and he doesn't want the magician to be correct, and he doesn't want to give the magician any kind of information? Of course not. So what Oz will do, and we'll see it again later in the Jake Paul podcast, is that he will simply say, hey, you did that particular thing. That is the reason why I now know this particular piece of information. He'll choose a detail that is so small and so insignificant that anyone kind of following along at home didn't really catch it. And so when we see that he caught something but we didn't catch it, and he's got a reason that he later justifies and proves is correct because it links to the information that he's trying to get, because he does that, we give him respect. We say, damn, this guy really does have insane skills, right? That is absolutely one of the biggest things that Oz does. So you can look out for it, and he'll do it very frequently. And all you have to do is just kind of rewind and say, did he actually bop his thumb? Or did someone actually move their eyes and count the letters in a name? That's what you need to look for.
In between 2 words. It's 2 words, isn't it? The answer's 2 words.
It is 2 words.
Yeah? What are you going, 2 words? How would I have known that? He acted like that was normal. All right, hold on.
He's sleeping on it. And that was 8.
Of course it's 2 words.
Oz is a little bit frustrated there that this guy is kind of unimpressed with what he's done.
Yeah, that was easy.
All right.
Don't handle your brethren.
Which word is more interesting to you? The first one or the second one, or you don't care?
Don't care.
Don't care?
Don't care.
All right. Think of either word. You do it.
Okay.
You thought a second word?
No.
No?
Yeah, Parks.
Oh, good. I like his moving around. See, he's the opposite. He does the opposite.
Again, why would Oz get that wrong? When Oz makes guesses, you'll see that when he actually guesses, when he doesn't know. So in this case, he knows what the 2 words are because he's gotten that information beforehand, which again, we will get to very, very shortly. He instead knows that it's one of these 2 words. And so he's either thinking of a first word or the second word. And so he'll just guess in that instance. And 50% of the time he'll be right. And 50% of the other time he'll use something like this, where some kind of justification, or he turns it into a joke of some kind. Or I think he's about to pivot here and say that he'll now use that as a basis for figuring out information later.
He looks this way when he looks that way. He's kind of, watch, now we'll figure him out. You're thinking of the first word then. Pick any letter in the first word. Don't tell me which one. All the letters in front of you, boom. You grab one out and you take that letter like it's a Scrabble tile and you can hold it in your hand. Can you see that letter?
Yes.
So what he did is he looked at the first letter because his eyes went to the left. That's the first letter. We read left to right. But he does the opposite. You didn't think of the first letter, did you?
No.
See, he did that to throw me off. Come on. Who are you talking to right now?
Yeah, that's what he did at the little secret meeting.
I think you jumped, and then you grabbed one, and I thought it was like right near the middle, but it wasn't in the middle. It's not the last letter, is it either?
No.
N. Are you thinking of an N?
I am.
You are. Yep.
Yo, fam.
So to someone watching what he did, it looks super impressive. Spoiler alert, the word that is the focus of this particular segment is only 4 letters long. If he rules out the fact that he's thinking of the first letter, which he just asks him, and then if he's not thinking of the last letter, which again, he just asks him, then it's again just a coin flip of a guess, right? In which case you have a vowel in this case and a consonant, in which case most people are probably going to think of a consonant just because it's a little bit more interesting. But again, it's not going to be 100% of the time, but it doesn't matter, right? He just uses these things, and it's actually, you can often tell when you watch this, Oz is more impressed with himself when he makes a legitimate guess, like a coin flip kind of guess, and he gets it right. You can tell that he gets a little bit excited with himself, and he wants to like plug it more than the actual reveal, which would, you'd think that the reveal would be way more impressive, right?
Holy
It's not, because he knows the word.
shit, Parks.
See, that's real talk right there. He just thought of a letter. I knew it was an N. It sounded like an M in my mind. Is there, on a scale of 1 to 10, you've seen all the stuff I've done, but this is for you. You called me out. Where on a 1, 10 is impossible. Impossible. Where does this fall for you?
8.
How do we make it a 10? Hold on. I got it. I got the second word.
Yo, Parks, if you let him make it a 10 right now.
He said I have the second word.
Yeah, you had an 8
Holy
for the first word.
shit.
But when I go right there,
No
and I wrote
way.
this,
You better not.
you want me to show you or you want me to just say it to you?
Say it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Your boy's here. You see him. You're 9 years old. You're high five. Bing chow.
How the fuck did you get that?
Is it Bing Chow?
It's Big Chow.
So, did you catch the mistake? Oz said that it was when they were 9 years old and they would say to each other, Bing Chow. But earlier he said that this was actually a phrase that they said to each other when they would get fucked up. So they're older, right? They're drinking, they're teenagers, unless they were drinking at 9. But Oz just misremembered that, right? And it sounds like a kind of 9-year-old thing to say, Bing Chow. But these kind of mistakes Oz makes all the time. But it doesn't matter because the main reveal, of course, is the word.
Is that right?
Holy
Yo, what the fuck is going on, yo?
bullshit is this? That was a good way to. I see what you tried to do, though.
What?
On terms of the throw off. Like
Oh,
the
yeah,
Bing, that was a great. That's a good.
Who's
Whatever
gonna
you
come up
thought
with
of.
that?
Yeah. And he came up with this shit. This little Peter Parker looking. This motherfucker. This guy is fucking great.
And
You
Joe,
like a time traveler or something? Like you
that's what Pat McAfee calls me.
Now he
goes, "You
did give
traveled
me
back
his
in time."
pen and
Yeah.
his little pad to write on.
You know, no pens, no pads, no nothing.
Boom. There we go. That's the reveal. This guy says that he gave him his pen, his pad to write on. What? You didn't see any pen or a pad, and you see that Oz comes in real quick, right?
Calls me.
Now he
goes, "You
did give
traveled
me
back
his
in time."
pen and his little pad to write on.
You know, no pens, no pads, no nothing.
You got
No pens, no pads, no nothing. Oz is panicking, right? Because he has now just dropped the bomb. This is it. There is pre-show stuff that happens that Oz uses to interact with people to get the information. And this is why mentalism is considered bottom of the barrel magic trick stuff, because that's always what it is. It's always write this information down and I've got some kind of way of getting it. That's what mentalism magic is 95% of the time. The other 5%, it's getting people to think of like a number between 1 and 10 and then just guessing things that people regularly guess. Like 7 is a very common number that people choose between 1 and 10, right? But in terms of this kind of stuff, it's always going to be some kind of gimmick. So if you look at this, there's a thing called a telepathy pad, which works like this, a little notepad, just like this guy was describing. And this notepad is something that people can write on, right? And all he would have to do is say, look, I'm going to try to guess something in order to keep you honest and make sure that you don't change your mind at the last second to make me look bad. I want you to write down the answer on this pad. You can take it off, you can tear it off and keep it, put it in your pocket. I'm not going to look at it or anything. And then when we do the show, I'm going to guess, and that way at least you'll be honest. He'll then take his pad back and look what he's got. He's got a device on there, right? That's just a pressure sensor that's able to keep track of whatever they wrote beforehand. And so all Oz has to do is something like that every single time. He just needs to have some kind of way of interacting with people in order to get them to write the answer down. And because he's got so much cred now, because he's so famous and well established, it would be really easy to come in with people and say, hey, look, you know I'm a mentalist. You know that I do this insane body language stuff. I get it right a lot. Sometimes I'm wrong, but I get it right a lot. And of course, if you use this method, you're going to get it right all the time, right? So he says, I get it right a lot. And I just want to make sure that, because some people will sabotage me. Some people will sabotage me and give a fake answer, even though I did actually correctly get the correct answer. They're not going to tell me that I got the correct answer because they want to make me look bad. And so as insurance for not making me look bad, I want you to just write down the answer, go in the corner, here's my notepad, here's my pen, write it down, tear the notepad off, put it in your pocket, give me my notepad back. And that way, at least we will have proof that I got it wrong when it comes time, when we're on the show, when we're on the podcast, and I'm going to actually guess. That's a pretty solid way to do this particular trick. And then people aren't even going to mention that, because it doesn't even seem like the trick at this point. It just seems like kind of background processing, logistical sort of stuff, right? It just seems like kind of security rather than the actual performance. And because people are already buying into the idea that he's actually doing body language stuff, they're not even on the radar. They're not even considering that he's going to use a method like this, except for this guy who's smart enough to say he did give me his pen, his pad to write on.
If he calls me,
Now,
he
he did give
traveled
me
back
his
in time.
pen and his little pad to write on.
No pens, no pads, no nothing.
You got him.
Joe,
Yeah.
you got me good. Joe.
And there it is. You got him, and then Oz says, you got me good. Because he can't talk about it anymore at that point. He can't dismiss it. He doesn't want to talk about it. He's a magician. He's misdirecting you. He doesn't want you to be thinking about those areas where the actual answer is, where the secret actually lies. And we'll see this later when he does the trick again. And I want to see sort of how powerful Oz's ability to use language is to control people in the moment.
You know what? You said it's my pen. This is a pen. I don't care what. I don't want to write it because people can't hear it when we're on there. What if you write this down somewhere, or you don't want to write it?
I wrote it.
No, you're not write anything. There's nothing here. Here. How can?
So again, right, another miss. At this point, Oz is trying to enter your mind and to suggest that no one wrote down anything here at all, right? And so he uses that language in order to prompt Joe Budden to say, no, nothing's written down anywhere. But he fails because Joe Budden, his mind is already widening beyond the context of the immediate podcast, and he's thinking about what happened before the show. And of course, he wrote it down. He would have similarly written down something in Oz's pad, and that is how Oz was able to get the information. Everything downstream from that is just showboating. As one final example, I'm going to show you this one from the Jake Paul podcast, just to end where we started, which is that by using critical reasoning, we can establish that Oz is lying, and that if he's lying about what he's doing, then there has to be some other way that he gets the information, which we've already established is going to be some kind of notepad, some kind of gimmick where he talks to people beforehand, gives them some kind of justification for writing it down, and then he's able to use that to later actually accurately perform the mentalism feat. So let's watch this with Jake.
Yeah, but brother, there's no pattern or thing going on here with me bringing up a random name from my childhood.
Should we get into that now or later? Because it's going to be hard to unwind once we
But I
start
think
doing
the
crazy
audience
stuff.
should pay attention to this because he set up a trick earlier and then
Hold
he
up,
says...
I want to make sure we say this. I said to you one thing. I said, Jake, you...
So you can see Oz panics here. Jake just said, we set up a trick earlier, and Oz has to immediately clamp down on that and say, whoa, we didn't set up anything. What we said was this. And he'll always make it out that when he's actually setting up a trick beforehand, it's really about trying to give someone time to think of something that would be really difficult to guess. And again, coming right back to that first episode with Joe Rogan, if he wanted to demonstrate this ability, just get someone in the moment to come up with a random number, to write it down on the podcast, a completely random number, and have Oz guess it. You will never see Oz do that particular trick. You will never see Oz get someone and tell them to write down something on a notepad, that is completely random in the moment that they haven't written down earlier, and then he guesses that. That would be the most pure way to show that he's got the abilities that he's claiming he does have. He'll never do that because it always relies on this pre-show work. So watch this.
You've been, in the public eye since you were what age, would you say?
15.
15, right? So think about this. I said to you, here's what I do. I want you to think of someone. And the first thing, if I'm watching this, is I would have said, he must have looked this up, right? He must be. So I said, think of someone from your past that literally nobody would know. If I call Logan right now, lift the mic up. There we go. If I call Logan up and said,
I just want to, this is another little subtle thing. You see how he reacted to the microphone, right? And he says, lift the mic up. There we go. Again, that's the kind of thing you do when you're in this sort of hyper tense performing sort of state. If you're relaxed and you're just being genuine and you're just telling things like they are, when someone comes in to adjust the microphone, you don't mention that. You don't comment on it, right? You comment on it because he's frazzled, because he's in this sort of heightened state.
hey, Jake's thinking of some kid from back in the day. Would he know who this was? Would he guess it right now? I get your brother on the phone right now. I get mom or dad on and say, Jake's thinking of somebody random from his past. Guess it. I give them 3 tries. Are they going to guess who you just thought of?
No.
3 tries, right? No way. So watch.
But that's what I'm saying. There's not a pattern to this.
And quick question. Did you whisper this to somebody here? Is there a microphone you whispered it?
So Jake is being thoughtful and genuine, and he's trying to say, hey man, what you're saying doesn't add up. You're suggesting that you're this master of figuring out patterns, but there is no pattern here that I can ascertain. In which case, if Oz could really do the whole pattern thing, he would just indulge him, right? Show how there was a pattern. Tell him what that particular pattern was.
No, nobody knows.
Did you write it down anywhere? No.
I put it in my phone because...
Oh, good. Well, hold on. Is it on your phone right now or it's gone?
No.
Okay, right. So again, he says, did you write it down anywhere? And just like before, it hasn't gone exactly how he's liked, because it's obvious that he's asked Jake to write it down in his phone. So again, he's got some kind of gimmick where Jake is, using his phone now, and you can see that Oz cuts the conversation short very quickly. He doesn't want Jake to talk too much about what happened beforehand.
No.
I put it in my phone because...
Oh, good. Well, hold on. Is it on your phone right now or it's gone?
No,
hold on.
Cleared the history.
This guy cleared his browser history. All right. So you literally thought of somebody.
And I hid in a corner while I was typing it.
And what did you do? You checked if it was a popular name?
So Oz now has to justify why, because everyone's thinking, why did you just get this guy? Why did you get it to write it down in a phone? Aren't you supposed to be spontaneously guessing these things on the show? And so Oz knows that he has to explain himself now to the viewer, and this is the cover story, right? And the cover story is...
Yeah.
Because I'd say, look up if this is a popular name. Because if you pick Michael, man, I'm going to be disappointed in you right now.
He made me pick a super random name from my childhood that's very hard.
2 minutes ago, right? I didn't make you anything. I said think of somebody no one would guess. Here's what you do.
And again, Jake is now saying, he made me do this. He made me look it up. He made me, which is all completely true. And Oz has to flat out deny it. I didn't make you do anything, right? You just chose a completely random name. And he has to always drive home about how impossible it would be for him to have researched this name beforehand. Which it would be the case, right? That it would be impossible for him to have researched something like that. Instead, he just gets Jake to use a gimmick in some way that allows him to get the information and know for sure what it is. So there you have it. That's all I really have to say. It's kind of interesting to watch Oz from the perspective of knowing for sure that he knows what the answer is before he actually figures it out, because then you can kind of watch him in a new way. And in fact, maybe we'll leave with that. Watch what he does here. It's really interesting. So know for a fact that he already knows what the answer is, and then let's watch.
Watch my fingers. Jake, 4 letters. Brandon, Brandon, right? Jasper, Jasper. For those listening to audio, all I do is count with my fingers. And you know what you just did? I counted everybody's name, so you counted in your head. You're like, you naturally counted this guy's name, and your eyes went like this. Watch me. Boom, 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 boom. Kid's name is 5 letters.
So you see what he said there, right? He was counting names, but it was all a trick because as he was counting out particular names, it was going to trigger Jake to count the letters in the name that he was thinking of. But if you watch Oz's eyes, he never looks at Jake to actually get the information that he says that he got.
I counted everybody's name, so you counted in your head. You're like, you naturally counted this guy's name, S-P-E-R. For
Watch
those
it
listening
here.
to audio, all I did was count with my fingers. And you know what you just did? I counted everybody's name, so you counted in your head. You're like, you naturally counted this guy's name, and your eyes went like this. Watch me. Boom, 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 boom. Kid's name is 5 letters, isn't it?
Yeah, it's happening.
You said you didn't, but you did. I'm trusting you. You did.
Wait, but I didn't spell it out fully, though.
And now you can see it's breaking down here. Jake didn't count the letters. He didn't go boom, 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 right? He didn't do any of that. He didn't even get to the end of it. He wasn't thinking about that. Oz has made this particular claim because it sounds convincing, because it makes it seem that he's paying attention to all these details. And all you really need to do is give Oz the benefit of the doubt that, okay, maybe he can do these particular things. Maybe he is just accurately telling you how he does what he does. In which case, just watch that portion of the video and see that it's impossible, because he was never looking at Jake. He could have never seen Jake's eyes do what he said he saw Jake's eyes do. And then you know that he's lying. And when someone's lying, they're lying for a reason.